Hello there. Welcome to the second part of this tutorial series. So we're going to start by making materials, so let's jump right in. So first of all, I'm going to clear all the transformations for this rig. So let's go to the material we have. So as you see, there's a diffuse shader, but we don't want that, so let's instead swap it in for a principled shader. So we're going to turn off the specularity and we're going to turn up the sub subsurface scattering, and we'll turn that to like zero point 0.8, and then we'll increase the brush size for subsurface scattering. Again, this is just small stuff. You don't really need to pay too much attention. Just know that you should change the base color to kind of a light blue and the subsurf to a white, and change the subsurf to about a 0.8. That's all you really need to do. So now let's move on to the black icing, and let's duplicate the diffuse shader we have here, and let's switch to this shader to, well, let's use a Fresnel node, and we'll switch it to a mix shader, and we'll switch this one to a glossy shader. And this is a basic Fresnel setup. You should know this, and yeah. So again, we're going to change the IRR value a bit and just play around with the settings. I think that's a little too glossy, but yeah, I think that's good. So I just kind of want to give a quick render. And make sure to turn on denoising, by the way. Um, it makes your renders a lot better, especially with the new update of Blender. So I just want to see um, just some parts of the material just to make sure everything looks all right. Yeah, I think that's fine. Gonna change the darkness of the eyes a little. It looks a little too dark. And let's get rid of everything else in the scene. So I'm going to replace everything with sun lamps, and yeah, just make everything basic, because we are really not working about the environment in this part. Instead, we're just working on the animation. So let's enter pose mode, and we're going to clear all our transformations, or we already did that. And just set the timeline to start at frame 1 and end at frame 25. And let's start moving um, all our bones into position. So we're going to start off with a walk cycle, and this is going to be the first frame in the walk cycle. So because the first frame of the walk cycle is that initial um, starting pose with the arms forward and the legs extended to their maximum, um, we're going to pose like that. I'm just moving some bones out of the way to a different layer, and that just makes it easier for the rig to use. So again, we're just tweaking the directions of the bones, and then we're just going to start set a keyframe on the first frame. Now let's go 6 frames up, or actually let's go 12 frames up to frame 13, and we just copied and pasted the first frame, and we reversed it for the 13th frame, and we just copied the same one and pasted it on frame 25. Sorry, you want the timeline to go to frame 24, I meant. And now we're doing the mid pose between the, so this is going to basically be the overlap when the leg, the first leg that moves, overlaps with the second one. And again, we want to move the body part slightly to show that there is motion. So we're still going to have, it's not going to be one leg completely over the other. And then again, we're going to copy and paste to where we need it. Again, using those copy and paste buttons down at the bottom of the menu. And just fill in some gaps. And then now we can start tweaking. So I'm just going to move the arm position, and I'm going to move the head just to show a little movement between frames. So here I'm going to move the head slightly. And then once I have that, I'm just going to copy and paste and set keyframes. And there you go. There's a small little walk cycle. And that's pretty good. And I'm going to switch to material mode so you kind of have an idea of what it looks like. But make sure at the top left, that's basically your FPS. And as you see, our animation is going to go at 24 FPS. So just keep in mind that what you see in the viewport might not be what the actual animation speed is. Keep an eye on that FPS when you play the animation. And so we're going to add a curve in order to build a path that this can walk on, the rig can walk on. So we're going to constrain the rig to the curve using a follow path constraint. And again, we're going to animate the path so that the rig follows the curve. And now you see the rig's not exactly following the curve all the way, so we'll just change the number of frames required for the rig to complete the path, and we'll change that to 72. And now what we'll do is open up the dope sheet, and we will just select Shift-D and copy all those keyframes 2 more times so that it completely overlaps those 72 frames. And as you see now, because we constrain the rig to the curve, no matter how we twist the curve, the rig will follow. And this is it makes it very easy to control where the rig's going, and makes it much easier to control the direction of the rig and how it walks. So there's a neat little trick. So now we're going to do a final stepping motion because at the end of the 72nd frame, we want our character to stop. So again, we're just going to basically have a simple stop by putting our character, having our character put 1 foot forward as they stop. Now there's a bit of sliding, so I'm going to, in between the frames, I'm going to start editing, kind of editing it slowly, so it's a little more nuanced and it looks like the legs are not sliding on the ground. Rather, they're actually walking. And you might want to add some keyframes in between if you feel the need to. So I think I'm going to do that a little just to make sure everything looks like it's stepping in line. And it's just small tweakings that give your rig and your animation more realism. So again, just small tweaks. And then we'll have our stop. And then we'll continue on. So again, 6 frames later, we're going to have our character basically stand upright after walking. And we're just going to set that up. and then just have a keyframe. And we'll just scrub through the animation. Looks pretty good. And now we're going to set up a camera briefly, so we kind of have an idea of what our final scene should look like. So now let's do a little wave with our character. So we'll position the arm, again 6 frames afterwards, and we'll just use our IK rig for that. And let's move the um, main hip bone, and we'll set a keyframe. And again, 6 frames later, we'll adjust the arm a little bit, adjust the body, adjust the head, and set another keyframe. Now looks pretty good. I'm going to add a little more arm movement. The thing about movement, I'm going to add an in-between frame because the elbow kind of overlapped, as you see. So that doesn't look good. So I'm going to just adjust the IK a little and change a few things. And I'm going to just delete a few keyframes. Again, Alt-I toggles keyframes. So um, while I can enable keyframing, Alt-I deletes them. So now again, I'm just copying and pasting those keyframes so that there is a nice wave. And that looks pretty good. Another thing is that I want my character to look at the camera uh, when he or she waves. So I'm going to set that up with the body. And the thing is, we can't just do a simple rotation because that just looks unrealistic. So we have to kind of do a gradual one. So I'm going to start deleting some keyframes so that our body slides, or not slides, it rotates slowly. And I'm going to start adding some in-between keyframes to kind of emulate a step. So the character essentially will, instead of just rotating to the side, will actually step to the side. And that makes the motion and the animation a little more realistic. Again, if you feel that the animation is a little too clunky or it's just very jarring, you can move keyframes back or just add in-betweeners in order to make your animation seem more fluid. But be sure not to overdo it. So as you see here, scrubbing through the animation, it looks pretty nice. I want my head to be facing the camera, so again, I'll go back and I'm going to use the dope sheet instead, and I'll start to delete those keyframes in order to replace them again. So as you see now, once I deleted those keyframes, my head will instead follow the last known keyframe. So now I'm going to just set up my keyframes again and just fill in the gaps. And that looks pretty good. So again, you can use the curve to basically manipulate how you want your character to go. So yeah, here's a simple setup for a walk cycle. And I think that's pretty good. Make some final modifications. Change the head position a little. And I think that's it. Okay, thanks for watching. And good luck. See you in the next video.